Wow. Well, there's so much to say about it. It's almost a tragedy, actually, that this conversation in this way has to take place. I mean, it is a tragedy. It's a tragedy on the level of that which had to spark this conversation, the senseless murders, the deaths, the injustice that had to spark the conversation. But when I say it's a tragedy, I mean on a different level as well, which is it's a tragedy that we even have to have a conversation about where yoga and social justice intersect, where yoga and right action intersect. Because at the core, not only should they intersect, but they should actually overlap. The practice of yoga as a spiritual practice, I mean, yes, it's fantastic for your body, but ultimately yoga is a spiritual practice. It's a spiritual system that begins with the yamas and the niyamas. It begins with ahimsa. And it takes us literally, it is the journey from nonviolence to samadhi. The 8 limbs of yoga given to us by the sage Pantajali literally are the entire spectrum. They go through asana, they go through pranayama, but it's a system of how do we live? How do we think? How do we interact with our own minds, with our own ignorance, with our world? And tragically today, there's a shallowing of yoga. And this is certainly not the first time we've seen it. This is certainly not the first conversation that's taken place about it. It just now has become so essential to have this conversation. Spirituality isn't about having a Buddha statue or some nice crystals or being able to chant some mantras or saying Jema instead of hey, hi, how are you? Spirituality is how we live. Spirituality is really, and yoga is, union and oneness. Not just union and oneness with that which feels really nice, but ultimate union and oneness with all as all. When we practice, if you look even at the most physical level, as we practice asana, as we work with the body and the breath, what every good yoga instructor will do in a class is make sure that the students are attuned and attentive to every aspect of the body and of the breath. So, okay, you're stretching down in Trikonasana. The hand is going down, but what about the hand that's going up? The front leg is there, the ball of the toe of the front leg. What about the heel of the back leg? What about the turn of the chest? What about the turn of the head? What about the breath? And the good yoga teacher is going to constantly bring the attention and the awareness back to the entirety. No asana is about a muscle group or a bone or a physical position. They are dynamic intersections of the physical body with the breath, with the energetic system, with gravity, with the world. And I mention this because that which we learn on a yoga mat, of the inclusivity, the essentialness of inclusivity, is something we're supposed to carry with us off the mat. You can never do a good asana if you're only aware of one limb or one side of the body, the right side of the body, but you forget the left. The front leg you've got good, but you let go of the back leg. A good yoga asana is balance. When we say hatha yoga, sun, moon, it's a balance. in life, as we walk off the mat, what does it mean? It means be aware of it all. Your strong leg, your weak leg. The part that externally rotates very well, the part that doesn't rotate so well. The muscle group that is open, limber, flexible, allowing, and the part of the body that's contracted, that's tight. And that is a model for how we're supposed to live. Yoga is what we are supposed to carry into our lives. And these days, what we are seeing, remembering, realizing, is all of the parts of our community, our society, our world that we have created that are being left behind, that are the parts that are unattended to. It's like my favorite story of the 3 men who are stranded in the boat in the middle of the ocean. They start to fight. It's a stressful situation. And so in order to alleviate their stress, they divide the boat into 3 equal portions with invisible, imaginary lines. And one day, 2 of the men look over and they notice that a leak has sprung in the 3rd man's part of the boat. And they say, "Stop it up. We're going to drown. The boat's going to sink." And the 3rd man says, "Oh, don't worry. It's only leaking in my part of the boat." And I love the story because it fits so many circumstances. But here, when we're speaking about our societies and race and equality and oneness, the idea, the illusion that we can have a leak in any part of the boat and actually expect that we as a society, we as a people, we as a world can stay afloat, can stay healthy, is an illusion. But it's worse than an illusion, because it is an illusion that is rooted in not only ignorance, but that is rooted in violence. Because that 3rd part of the boat where there's a leak, presumably, isn't suffering as it leaks. But what we are doing in our society, that permission for that leak to be there, that permission for there not to be attention, for there not to be equality, for there not to be justice, is not only illusory, not only ignorant, but it is violence. And so now we are being called. You know, we speak so frequently that spirituality is waking up. It is waking up out of an illusion into the truth, into the reality. And this is what we are being called to do today, to wake up into a reality in which, yeah, there is violence. And it doesn't matter whether we've memorized all 10 of the yamas and niyamas or not. Doesn't matter how many of the mantras we can chant or how good our asanas may be. If we are engaging in discrimination, prejudice, if we are permitting our society to engage in discrimination and prejudice, we are violating the very first yam of non-violence, of Ahimsa. And that is something that every one of us is being called to see. The second, of course, is Satya, truthfulness. So many of us close our eyes. We don't want to see it. Or we call it something other than what it is. If we do that, forget how good your asana and your pranayama are. It's not yoga. It's not dharma. It's not honesty. It's not spirituality. Spirituality, when we speak about light in spirituality, when we speak about oneness, when we speak about all of the bliss, it's not light that we get because we've turned our back on the darkness, or light that we get because we are ignoring darkness. It's light that we get through seeing, recognizing, acknowledging the darkness, and then figuring out how we, individually and collectively, can be a light. And we are being called upon, all of us, to do many things. We're being called upon to be aware, first to recognize, where every single one of us, or most of us, are culpable, where we in our lifetimes have either engaged in or allowed to happen in front of us, either literally in front of us or just in our societies, the injustice, the discrimination, the violence. So we are being called upon to be aware. That awareness is the first step. Whether we speak about yoga, whether we speak about spirituality, whether we speak about sustainable and inclusive societies, we first have to be aware. If we don't know which part of our body is diseased, if we don't know where the bacterial infection is, we can't treat it. So the first piece is we have to be aware. The second piece is we have to recognize how we are the problem. And it's not comfortable. It doesn't feel good. But to really recognize how we have been part of the problem. And again, it may be directly. It may be through an act of commission, something I've actually done. It may simply be through an act of omission. But those are actions. You know, when we speak about karma, when people ask so much about the karmic fruits, one of the core teachings of karma is that which you do is, of course, an action, and you get the fruits of that. But that which you don't do is also an action, and you also get the fruits of that. If someone falls down in front of me, and I don't bend down to pick them up and help them, I've acted. That non-bending down to help them is an action. And so, first, awareness of the problem, the situation, where that infection in our society is, due to our blindness, due to us turning our backs, due to us just looking for mental states that are more comfortable, due to us not wanting to take the time to go to the depth of realizing, wow, maybe I'm not quite as awake as I may think. Maybe I'm not quite such an embodiment of the yamas and niyamas as I may think. So really recognizing that. And with that, doing whatever we can to fix the situation. It isn't enough to just acknowledge it. It's important. The awareness is essential. The personal taking of responsibility is essential. The remorse is essential. But it's also essential to do what we can do. If I accidentally or purposefully, let's assume accidentally, set your house on fire, it's really, really important that I feel really badly for doing that. But it's also really important that I do whatever I can to build you a new one. That I do whatever I can. That I give you my house. That I fix the situation that knowingly or unknowingly I have created. Simply saying to you, oh my God, that was an accident. I didn't, realize that my cigarette butt or my incense or whatever it was gonna set this place on fire and take your house down. It's an important first step, but it's not enough. we need to actually do whatever we can to fix the situation. And sadly, we can't rewrite history. We can't go back and give rights where they weren't there. We can't go back and unkill the people who have been killed. But we can make amends wherever we can. And lastly, we can insist upon the creation of and our own active, engaged role in creating an entire new society. If I make a horrible mistake, I hurt someone, I burn a house down, I do whatever it is, and you find yourself in a court of law, what is the judge going to do? Well, the judge is first of all going to make sure that you feel really badly, that you've got remorse. Then the judge is going to make sure that you do whatever is possible to fix that situation. But the judge is going to do one last thing. The judge is going to do whatever he or she can do to make sure you don't do it again. And this is where people who have committed crimes under the influence of alcohol or drugs, or in fits of rage, end up getting sent to mandatory drug treatment programs, mandatory alcohol treatment programs, mandatory anger management programs, to make sure that we don't go out and do the same thing again. And as a society, this is where it's so essential. And lastly, there's so much I can say on the topic, but lastly for right now, that last piece of action, or the last several pieces of action, of doing whatever we need to do to be part of the solution. Tragically, too many people in the spiritual world feel that somehow spirituality is the renunciation of action. That somehow to be spiritual, I need to stop being a human doing and I need to start being a human being, right? I mean, we hear these sorts of things. And that misunderstood, misappropriated teaching is a very tragic one. Because what it does is it creates a situation where we cut ourselves off from the essential outcome of actual awakening. When you awaken with truth, you act in truth. When you awaken into oneness, you act in oneness. When you awaken in yoga, you act in yoga. And so this is where in the Bhagavad Gita, for example, my favorite go-to scripture for everything spiritual, Lord Krishna spends 700 verses explaining to Arjuna and explaining to us through Arjuna why spirituality is not about sitting this one out. Why spirituality is not about allowing darkness to overcome light, allowing unrighteousness to win out over righteousness. The whole core of the Mahabharata, of the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, are all about every one of our spiritual injunction, requirement, imperative to stand up and to do our duty, to fulfill our dharma, which is to bring back light to the darkness, to bring back dharma where there is a dharma. And no, it isn't always pretty. No, it isn't always easy. No, it isn't always fun. And this is where, if you look at the Mahabharata, you look at the Ramayana, our Hanuman festival rooted in the teachings of the Ramayana. Well, that wasn't fun. If some webinar had, interviewed Lord Ram or Hanumanji or Sita or Lakshman after the war and said, "So what'd you think?" They wouldn't say, "Oh, that was great. Just what I wanted, just how I really was looking forward to spending these years of my life, just what I was really looking forward to doing." Not fun, not glamorous, not romantic, not easy, but essential. Our Dharma. And this is the core teaching of spirituality, is the peace that we speak about, the bliss that we speak about, is not a peace that is in the absence of the turmoil of the outer world. It's not a bliss that is in the negation of pain and suffering. It is a peace and a bliss that I experience through me while I am engaged, actively engaged in fulfilling my duty, in fulfilling my Dharma. And I experience that peace and I experience that bliss for one reason and one reason only. Because I realize I'm not the doer. I'm not the one righting the wrong. I'm not the bringer of light. I'm not the answer to everything. It's God. It's the divine working through me. I'm just a tool. I'm just an instrument. I'm a vehicle. I'm a vessel. And so I allow that divine to flow through me. And in that flowing through me of the divine is the peace and is the bliss. We have misunderstood spirituality to be the don't talk to me, don't tell me that, don't come near me because, see, I'm really peaceful and meditative right now and you're going to ruin that. That's not oneness. That's not open-eyed mindfulness. Mindfulness is being aware, not just of how do I feel in every moment. I, this individual separate I. But how is the system? Like how is my full body in a yoga asana? How is the full system? How is this moment, this experience, for me, in the form of my African American, my black, my brown sisters and brothers? How is this moment for them? And by the way, how is this moment then for everyone also suffering from so much? Because when our hearts open, let it be this movement that opens them. But the beautiful piece is when they open to it all. And so we become conscious beings of awareness, of remorse, of solutions, of change for this, and also for all of the other forms of violence against our sisters and brothers upon this planet, violence upon the planet itself, upon our water, upon our air, upon our soil, upon our sisters and brothers dependent upon that water and that air and that soil. We become truly conscious and awake and connected. And that is what we're called upon to do. Nothing in yoga says run when it hurts. Nothing in yoga says when you hit a place of contraction, stop your practice. Nothing in yoga says where you experience resistance, run away. Everything whether it's our meditative practice, whether it's our physical asana practice, whether it's our practice of introspection, whether it's our practice of study, it's all about where it's difficult, where it hurts, where it's tense, where there's restriction, where there's contraction, stay there. Breathe into it. We have to breathe into this moment and to realize, yes, it is there. Yes, it is wrong. Yes, every one of us is complicit. And yes, we can be present. We can face it. We can breathe into it. We can open to it. We can listen to it. We can hear it. We can see it. And we can make a conscious decision to be part of the solution. And so these days we're seeing so many threads of solution. We're seeing the noise, and we need the noise. It needs to be loud. We need to say no very loudly. We're seeing the unity, the coming together in communities online, on social media, on so many other platforms, coming together as one collective, listening, hearing, opening ourselves, sitting with that which is uncomfortable. And now we need the threads of actually putting into place a system to fix that which we've all been complicit in breaking, to whatever extent we possibly can, and to fix the system that allowed it to break. In each of us individually, in the societies that we have created collectively, small societies, big societies, states, nations. And this is yoga, and this is spirituality. Open-eyed, open-hearted, full presence, full awareness, full readiness for whatever that flow of the divine through us can bring into dharmic, conscious action for change.